Hey y'all, this is Amanda and welcome back to my Texas Zone 8A garden, and we are preparing for a full week of triple digit temperatures here in the North Texas area. So I thought this would be a great time to teach you guys a few things about how to be successful planting brand new plants during the hottest parts of the summer. So I don't do a ton of planting during the hottest parts of the summer, but it's kind of hard for me to get away with doing absolutely no planting. And that's because I'm always preparing my garden for the next round of growth. Right now I've been growing my seedlings that are going to be going in the next month or so for all of my fall flowers. And of course, this is a great time of year to find a lot of plants on clearance. And because of that, sometimes I am forced to plant brand new plants into the ground or into my container gardens or into my raised beds during the hottest parts of the summer. And there are a few things that you can do to help yourself the best you can and help your plants be as successful as possible during that time. So today we're actually going to be planting a few things in this back area. So I'm going to go ahead and start by trimming up the willow a little bit so that we can see this furthest planter away, and then I'll show you what plants we're going to be planting and we'll talk about those tips. Okay, so we're going to be working on these two planters in the back here, and because of where we're wanting to work, I am going to do a little bit of a trim on the willow just so that y'all can actually see where we're going to be. This willow is one of my favorite. Actually probably is my favorite thing in the entire garden, but he does need a little trim every once in a while in a few places. I'm not going to trim this portion because I am counting on the shade from this, but I did want to open this area up a little bit, and I'll talk to you guys about what plants we're putting here. Okay, we're going to be planting a few things back here. These are my cattle troughs across the bag. They were purchased from Tractor Supply about, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago now. They've been wonderful. I've really enjoyed them. They do really great during the hottest parts of the summer. A lot of people ask, hey, are metal planters, are those okay during the summer? These have done great. I grow a lot of things out of them, and I've been very happy with them, and the idea that they're metal has not really been an issue with the hottest part of our summer. Now, this particular trough tends to be more in the shaded area. As you can see, the willow shades this area, and right past this willow is west, and so it actually gives just a little bit of dispersed sun through this, but it really allows this trough to be mostly shade. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a few coleus that I picked up from Lowe's, that clearance haul that I recently did. This particular variety is called Campfire Coleus. Let me give you guys a close-up view of that. Really pretty. It's kind of like a rusty kind of orange color. Coleus kind of changes color whether it's in the sun or whether it's in the shade. Some it brightens its colors if it's in the sun, and they tend to be a little bit deeper tones when in the shade. And this is an annual in my particular area, and it does say it's part sun to part sun, and it is mature height. It's about 14 to 30 inches high by 24 to 30 inches wide. And why am I planting this right now? Why am I planting it in the corner? Is it going to show up a lot? Not really. It does have some nice contrast to the willow, which will be really great. But the reason I'm really putting this in is I love to use coleus as foliage in floral arrangements, and this is great for later on in the summer heading into fall. I love this color tone. So if I get this in now, this stuff is really going to start growing. If you remember, it can be like 36 inches tall, and so that's some really great height. Now let's talk about what I've already got in here. Right now I've already got a trailing purple lantana in here. I put these on the front of all of my troughs. And so what I'm wanting to do is put these 3 coleus around kind of this back curve here of the trough. And I really like the color contrast with that. It contrasts with the willow behind it, but it also contrasts with the lantana in front of it. And once again, I've selected an area where it's more protected. So this should work great for the coleus. Okay, so as I'm beginning to dig these holes, let's talk about a few different things that you can do to help your plants along the way when you're planting them in the hottest part of the summer. One of the first things is the time of day that you're planting. It's better if you plant first thing in the morning, before the suns are really, really hot, high up, and before things are really, really warm outside. That's a really great time to plant. You can also plant late in the evening, and that's what I'm choosing to do right now, is I'm planting later in the evening. Now, another thing you can do is, if you do happen to have rain in your forecast, is you can choose to plant right before the rain comes through. And that's another good way to really acclimate a potted plant or a plant to its temperatures, and then also provide it quick water. Now, another cheat that I love to do, and I guess it's not really a cheat, it's more of a hack or a tip, is I like for my plants to be fully saturated, nice and wet before I plant them into the ground. That's super important. Also, when you're digging your hole, if the soil in your hole is really, really dry, highly suggest filling it with lots of water first, letting it all soak in before you put your plant. This is nice and moist, and this soil in here is nice and moist as well. So I'm going to get this coleus in and push the soil and mulch back around it. And I do say mulch because mulch is super important at this time as well, because it keeps the ground from drying out. So mulch is another really great kind of tip for planting these in the middle of the summer. Now, another thing that I'm going to do, which is going to seem pretty harsh, is I'm actually going to give this coleus a little bit of a pruning. Why would I do that? Well, coleus does flower, and I don't really want it concentrating on blooms right now. I want it concentrating on root growth in order to support it. I also would like for this to be a little bit more of a bushier plant. So what I did is I made cuts directly above a set of 2 leaves, and that will force this whole entire plant to branch out multiple places and become a lot stronger, because it's not trying to put on really tall growth, and it's not trying to bloom right now. Now, a little bit more information about these troughs back here. They do have drip irrigation to them, which is wonderful. Drip irrigation has been a game changer in my gardening life. It really helps out, especially in areas like mine, where the temps are really rough during the hottest times of the year. And so it really gives me an opportunity to make sure that everything is well watered in the exact place it needs to be watered without excess water. And I don't want to be wasteful with my water either. So that's really wonderful as well. All right, last coleus going in. And then once again, I'm giving it a nice trim. This guy is actually trying to put on blooms. Let me show y'all. Okay, you can actually see its blooms right here. And I actually like the blooms on coleus, but we don't really grow coleus for blooms. We grow it for the leaves. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just going to come down and I'm going to cut right above a set of 2 leaves. And this will encourage branching. You can actually see on this particular one, you see these 2 leaves, and you can see 2 new sets of branches trying to come up from those. So that's kind of the idea behind cutting above. And I just cut below. That's just because I wanted it a little shorter. But now I'll get a leaf right here, I'll get a branch coming out here, and I'll get a branch coming out from the other side of it as well. And this is extremely helpful. And I know a lot of people are like, wait, but why would you cut all that off? Isn't that what you want? Yes, I do. But like I said, once again, I'm really just wanting these plants to survive at this time of year. I want them to put on a lot of root growth, and I want them to look really good for end of summer, beginning of fall. And by cutting these back a little bit, giving them a little bit of a light prune, I'm going to actually set them up for better success than if I were to leave them just as they are right now. Okay, and even though my plants were very well saturated and then the soil was wet, I'm still going to go ahead and water them in really, really well right here. I'm not trying to get much of the foliage all that wet, just because it's hot and humid, and I don't want to contribute to potential for powdery mildew, which is pretty common at this time of the year in my garden. We're going to get these really, really well watered in. Okay, now that these are planted in, I'm not done with these. These are not something that you can just walk away right after planting. And actually, I do that a lot in the fall and even winter and in spring. I don't really stress about it once the plant is in the ground. It's a totally different approach for summer. I will be checking on these particular plants on a daily basis to make sure they're staying nice and moist, they're getting the water that they needed, but also I'm going to watch for extreme wilting if they're struggling at all. If they are struggling, a couple of things that I can do. I can include some kind of umbrella or shade situation here. I usually will just attach it to here and give them a little bit of extra shade from the sun, which tends to help out. If the plants continue to struggle, sometimes I'll just dig them right back up and put them right back into their nursery pots and go ahead and take them onto the porch and just keep them that way until the temperatures are a little cooler and a little easier to work with. So that's just a few things that I do to help planting these plants in the middle of the summer. Okay, so now let's step over and get our next plant into one of the troughs. Okay, so the next one that we're going to be planting is a mandeville vine. This is a tropical plant, and this is a vining mandeville vine. It has a few crunchy spots that need to be trimmed out before it's planted that then do as well. These have been acclimating outside on my back porch for almost 2 weeks now, which that actually helps out a lot with plants. If you go pick them up from the nursery and they haven't really been outside all that much, or they're fresh off the truck, having them on your back porch or your front porch in a little bit of shade, but acclimating themselves to the temperature where you can watch them closely is another really great tip to do with your plants prior to planting them out in the garden in the hottest parts of the year. So the goal with this mandeville vine is we're going to get it planted right here, and I'm hoping that it's going to grow up and over this particular lattice. Now, I do have a few bulbs in this particular planter, so we are going to be a little bit more gentle with the digging because I'm not really wanting to dig up these bulbs. If you accidentally dig up a bulb, it's not the end of the world. You can put it right back in the hole and it will be fine, but I would prefer not to disturb the roots on these, as I've already harvested them for this year and then they are going to be coming back for next year. So let's go ahead and get a hole started for the mandeville vine. Now this is a lot bigger of a root ball that I'm trying to work within, so I'm going to be loosening it up so that I can manipulate it a little bit more for what I need. It does look like I'm going to have one bulb in the way, so I'm going to go ahead and give that a pull. This is a gladiola bulb, and I will replant that at the end. Okay, I have gone ahead and removed the little trellis that it came with. I don't actually need it in this situation since I've got my own trellis. And I'm going to work this down and then come back and make sure once again that I'm getting the mulch all the way around this. And before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and get this bulb tucked back in here. And the bulb should be just fine. Okay. Like I said again, I made sure that my pot was nice and moist, or the plant was nice and moist before I put it in here, and that the soil that I was adding it to was nice and moist as well. We're going to do a quick trim up of anything that is dead or struggling, and then I'm going to go ahead and begin training it up over the trellis. Okay, this guy does have a few blooms, and this might seem super counterproductive, but I am going to be cutting that off. Like I said, I'm not trying to get it to bloom right this moment. My goal is for it to really focus on putting new growth into its root system so that it can survive the harshest part of the summer. Okay, so what I want to do is, since this is a vine and I have removed its existing trellis, is I do want to take the time to work some of these vines up the trellis and encouraging it in the correct direction that I'm wanting it for growth this season. You can do that a number of ways. You can just simply start with twisting if you want, which is the way I typically go. You can use some cute little clips. I typically get these from the Dollar Tree, but you can also get them on Temu if you haven't tried that site before. This is not an financial endorsement for them or anything. I just recently started ordering a few garden things from them, and happened to be a lot of things that I was ordering from Amazon anyway, and they're at a fraction of the price. And so let me do that. And then secondly, you can use pieces of twine like what I've got right here, and go ahead and gently tie the branches to the trellis. Whenever you're tying branches to a trellis for some kind of vining plant, you don't want to go really hard. Like, you don't want to tie that knot super hard on it. You want it just to be a soft, gentle knot, enough to hold it in place, but you don't want to cause damage, and you don't want to strangle the stems. And then once again, we're going to come in and really saturate this plant and all the soil around it to give it a boost. Now, fertilizing is really great for these plants at this time too, but as you've shown, I haven't been out. I haven't left my house in a while, so I haven't really gone out to buy anything, and I need plant tone. I haven't done it. So I'll apply a liquid fertilizer to these on my own time. I don't typically do that on video. But there we go. I think we're in good shape with this Mandeville vine. I think it'll be really fun to watch it grow. It's going to have beautiful red blooms, which I think will be very cool, especially with, I have a ruby moon hyacinth beam coming from the other side. So I think it'll be really cool when these kind of clash right in the middle. All right, you all, I hope you enjoyed this simple and quick video on how to set your plants up for success when you're planting them for the first time in the beginning of the summer. It is really tough to have plants going in the really hottest parts of the summer. Like I said, we're hitting those triple degree digits, but there are lots of gardeners all over the world who plant at the hottest times. You just have to do a few things to help your plants along. Let's go over those things one more time. Make sure you're planting at an appropriate time of the day. You want to plant in the early morning or the evening when it's cooler temps outside and it's an easier transition for the plant. It's also a great idea to look at your forecast, and if you do have upcoming rain, go ahead and plant right before the rainstorm. Make sure the potted plant is already very moist, highly saturated, and that the soil that you're putting it into is highly saturated as well. Fertilizing is really great to help boost that plant and that root growth along. Another way to boost root growth is to trim back any unnecessary foliage or blooms. Another way to really help out your plants when you're planting for the first time in the heat of the summer is to mulch. Mulch is a really great way to make sure you're maintaining moisture in the soil and that it doesn't dry out too quickly. You also want to make sure you are checking on these plants on a daily basis. You can't just drop them and forget them like you can during other times of the year. You do need to be checking on these to see how they're doing, making sure the moisture is staying make sure the soil is staying moist. And if any of your plants are struggling, a couple of things you can do. You can add an umbrella or some kind of shade cloth and able to give it a little bit of reprieve from the sun. And if the plant continues to struggle, go ahead and dig it right back up. Put it in its nursery pot and bring it back onto your porch in a little bit of shade and nurse it along that way until your temperature is cool and you can get it out into the ground. All right, y'all, thank you so much for joining me for today's video. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you know when my latest videos are up. And make sure you check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Crazy words today. As always, she's a mad gardener or decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.